Today on the right wing on Civically Minded, I want to discuss a nasty habit that is all too common amongst Christians on the conservative side of the aisle. I went to vote this morning in a statewide runoff election. The offices in question were who will be the Republican nominees for state auditor and lieutenant governor. Both offices wield considerable authority and sway within our state, and therefore the runoff is not insignificant. Even so, when I got to my local precinct this morning after dropping my kids off at school, I was met with tumbleweed. You see, the PCUSA church that is my local precinct, which is usually bustling with activity and a line of eager voters, was, well, less than crowded and enthusiastic this morning. I walked in to see a few middle aged and older women, all volunteers, of course, chatting and sipping coffee. And upon seeing me enter the fellowship hall, one lady quickly and apologetically jumped up to assist me in my civic duty. I assured her there was nothing and no reason to apologize, and I mentioned how quiet it was and asked if the early morning pre work rush of normal voters had already ended. She chuckled. Not been that kind of morning around here, she said to me, and then she directed me to the registration table. I obediently registered, providing my state issued ID, as of course is the law here in North Carolina, and I proceeded to the small standing table, partitioned in four equal quadrants by tall plastic walls, and I marked my ballot. No one else was there voting, and no one else came in while I was there. When I got back out to the car, the radio confirmed my suspicions. When the local news anchor, recapping the morning's headlines, reported a significant drop in voter participation for today's election. But why? Don't people know that today's election day? Don't they understand that no one can perform their civic duty for them? Or maybe they don't understand the significance of the two offices or the differences between the candidates. Whatever the reasons may be, the reality is that far fewer North Carolinians were headed to the polls today. Now, I thought about this on the way home, and it reminded me of a nasty reality that I see repeated in my own life and reoccurringly in the lives of Christians everywhere. We are sinfully lazy. We know that a better diet and daily exercise will keep us physically strong and fit, but that's a lot of work. We know that daily Bible study and time in prayer will make us spiritually strong, but it's easier to be spoon fed by the pastor. We know that being actively involved and intentional in our children's lives and Christian development will keep them safeguarded from evil and more likely to stay faithful to Christ. But, I worked all day and I'm tired. We also know that being engaged in and committed to Christian cultural and political transformation can actually turn the tide of even the most wicked peoples. Well, but I don't want to make waves, or maybe I'm afraid of losing my job or my respectability in the community. So instead, we will lose our health, our Christian walk, our kids, and our culture and nation to those more diligent and more fanatical than we. James 4:17 says, "Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin." I just finished reading Dr. Ben Merkel's book, The White Horse King. It's a great book, and I recommend it to anyone that wants to be reminded of the difference that a man can make when all seems lost. That one man's courage and defiance against the enemy can embolden other men to stand with him. The reoccurring problem, it seems, in King Alfred's day, the author explained, however, was the lack of follow through. There were battles that the men of Wessex won, driving the Viking hordes into retreat. But instead of chasing down the enemy and making sure that the victory was indeed decisive, they slacked off and drifted back home to their normal lives, content with the small victory over the skirmish instead of winning the greater war. This still seems to be a massive problem for the conservative Christian. We are content with victories and skirmishes like the Dobbs decision, but lack the conviction and tenacity to win the war. Ephesians 5:8-17 says, "For you were once darkness, but you are now light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret. But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light, for whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore he says, awake, you sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand the will of the Lord. In that passage, we're reminded that we all were once unregenerate, lost and groping in the darkness. But then God brought us into the light, and it is here in that light that He expects us to get busy shining. Now, most of us will never be someone like Alfred the Great, but God doesn't need all of us to be that. It's vital that we remember that He also uses timid Gideons and strategic Esthers, youthful Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, aged Polycarps, stubborn Pauls, and previously broken and then restored Simon Peters. God has proven countless times that a willing servant, obedient to Christ's call on their life and surrendered to the Spirit's leading, is something that all the powers of hell cannot stop. If we ever want to see reformation in our land, in our churches, and in our homes, we must be willing to outwork, outserve, and outlast our very devoted competition. For the right wing on Civically Minded, I'm Corey Wing. Until next time.